Hey everybody, what's up? I'm Jeffrey Way. Welcome back to yet another episode of our Convert a Warm, Cheerful Web Design to HTML CSS series. So in the last lesson, we finished working on the banner section. Now we need to flesh out the bulk of the main area. So this is where we last left off. Now before we continue, I want to make one note that I noticed in the comments. If you notice anything that you think, I wonder if you should be doing that, leave a comment and let me know, because we're intentionally doing a couple things here that we're going to fix later. To give you a teaser, one of them, you know that class of rounded that we applied to some of the elements in our HTML file? That's probably not the best idea, but we're going to figure out why that is, and then we'll change it later on. So if you see anything that looks odd, let me know, and then I'll let you know if we're going to be fixing it later in the series. Okay, so let me hide the web developer toolbar, and now let's flesh out the main area. Let's go back into Espresso. I'll open up my style.css file, go to the bottom, and now we're all set to get started. Again, let's make sure we give it a heading. And I'll copy this, go to the bottom, and replace it. And this one is going to be the main section. Always important to give these headings. I promise when you come back to it later, it'll be easier. Because now when I need to go to the banner area, rather than searching through a huge style sheet, I just search for dash banner, and now I'm right there, and I don't need to do it. If I need the header, dash header. And now we're there. So we're done. Let's go to the bottom and let's begin styling the main section. We need to go into Photoshop and figure this out. So the very first step is, do you notice how there seems to be a good bit of padding right here? So from the blog right up here, there's a nice bit of padding. I'm going to go ahead and take care of that right now. And we'll set maybe a padding top of, let's try 50 pixels. Padding top of 50 pixels. And now that just pushes it down just enough. But then there's one other thing if we come back to our Photoshop file. Notice how we have this background. So this color, and then the sidebar has its own color. Now, there are a handful of ways to accomplish this. One would be to apply a background color to the main section, and then another to apply a background color to the sidebar. But in those cases, you end up with issues where as soon as the sidebar completes, it cuts off, and then you end up with this odd looking layout. So a better method is to either use a background image on the main element, or why don't we be forward thinking and let's use a cool form of CSS3 gradients to achieve this. And we're going to do it all. That way, if you need to change the colors, you don't have to redo the images. And then if you want later, we can apply a fallback for older browsers that don't support it. All right, so the first step is within our main section, we need to apply a base color. So all we have to do is measure it again. And if you want to come in, measure it, grab the eyedropper tool, measure, and we get F8EEDF. All right, let's come back and paste that in. And now we're going to use our gradient. So we'll begin by working with Firefox because that's what we're in. And it'll be Moz, and it's linear gradient. We'll do this one together and then I'll paste in the rest so you don't have to watch. Okay, so within here, we need to specify that it goes from left to right. So I'll type left. And next, what is the beginning color? Well, again, if we just come back to Photoshop and we measure right around here, it's that same color. So I can just copy and grab that. Now, let's say we move it to red, and let's keep it just like that. And if we come back and refresh, this is what you're going to get. But notice also how it doesn't seem like the main content area is containing this information below. Why is it cutting off there? And it's because, again, the primary section is floated and our sidebar is floated. So we need to make sure that it contains those floats. So why don't we apply overflow of hidden? And now it's going to contain that float. Okay, but this still isn't what we want. We don't want a subtle gradient, or not subtle at all there, but we need a distinct line, as you can see right here. Distinct lines. So let's begin by grabbing the next color right there. And then also, if you look in between, we have these dividers. So we'll come back to that. Within Espresso, rather than red, I'm going to change this to E8, D8, C0. So now, again, if I come back and refresh the page, it's looking a little bit better, but we need that distinct line. So the way we achieve that is by applying specific percentages that are very close to each other. So for example, if I say I want to begin, and it'll be this color all the way up until 63.5%, and then I say I want this next color to come in at 63.6%, watch what happens now. If I refresh, you get that distinct line. So how did we get that figure 63.5? And it's just, again, measuring. If we come out a few clicks, I can come in, press I, Shift I if I want to switch to the ruler tool, and I can just measure how far it is. So you can see it's about 614 pixels, and then you find the percentage of that, and that's it. Okay, so we have our distinct line, but now we also want to apply that border color. If I zoom back in, you'll see that we have this white color and then a darker color. So we can grab these. Let's go ahead and select the white. Okay, we get that one, and we'll come into Espresso, and we'll say, paste that one at 63.6%, and now we need to get the one right after it as well. And there it is. So you may have to play around with this just a bit. Sometimes you want to do values that are the same, so we'll just play around and see how this one looks. Refresh, and now if I zoom in all the way, can you see that we now have that? If you want these, we can experiment with trying 6 and 7. And that gives us a little bit more of a distinct line. And notice the key there is applying them at the same value. So we're saying add that white line, and then almost identically after it, add this next color, and that creates those solid shapes. And so now if I zoom out using just CSS, we've created this background. And what's cool is that will extend as much as we possibly need it to. It's not extending below here because this is the footer section, not the main section. All right, cool. So we have that taken care of, but there's one last thing. If we come out and I zoom out just a little bit, you'll see that this isn't just a solid color. This too in the sidebar is a gradient. So we'll begin here, but it's going to work its way all the way out. And now what you'll see is it's going to work itself out to what the color over here is. As you can see, if I click there, it's the same color. All right, well, with that in mind, we can compensate. And we know that's our initial color, so we'll grab that. And then after this, I'm just going to add one more value, and that means after 63.7%, all the way up to 100% of the width, work your way back to this color. And let's try that out. Refresh, and now can you see that it's fading out? So if I zoom all the way out, you can see we have a cool little feature, and this color is the same as this, and that's how you accomplish it. Pretty neat. And then later we'll use the modernizer library that'll allow us to feature detect whether the browser supports gradients, and then you can provide some other fallback if you want. Okay, so I have this. Now I need to paste in the values for WebKit and the official form. So we'll grab this one and duplicate it. And I'll remove the Mozilla extension because that's what the W3 recommends. And then we also need WebKit. And with that pasted in, you see it's the same format. We just say from, but we specify color stops for each one rather than doing it in this more succinct way. Now if I come to Chrome, refresh, scroll down, and we get that exact same view. Looks really good. Okay, so now with that out of the way, we can begin working on the articles. So the articles are going to be this section right here, okay? So we have the image, we have the meta information, the featured image, etc., etc. So we can come down to the bottom and we'll say main and style all of the articles. Now the first thing we'll do is apply some padding right, because if we come back to Firefox, you'll see that text is coming really close, and that's not how it was in the design. So I'll set padding right equal to, say, 50 pixels. And that'll just push it away just a little bit because we don't want it to exceed the width of this image. All right, what else? Let's get that main image. So I'll say main article image. Now, I'm being a little generic here. If you have icons that are on your website, you might need to be more specific and give it a class of post image or something like that. Here, this will be fine. And we'll say margin. Let's just give it 10 pixels worth of margin on the bottom. And so I can use the shorthand for top, right and left, and bottom. Come back, refresh the page, and that just pushes that down just a little bit. Okay, so now when I hover over the heading 2 tag, let's not do an underline there. Let's do something a little bit different. So we'll say article H2, and by default I'm going to reduce all the margin, and let's also give a font weight of normal. Next, when you hover over that though, when you hover the H2 tag, we'll get rid of the text decoration and we'll make the font weight equal to bold. Hover over it and now it's bold. But we are getting that text decoration, aren't we? And of course that's because we want to apply that to the anchor tag instead. So we can say article h2a hover. And now we're getting that. Very cool. So now I want to style the h6. And if you'll remember, we could probably do something better for this element, semantically speaking. But if we come in, you'll see that the h6 houses the time and such. Okay, so now let's style that. Article h6a. And what we want here is just measuring that color. So it's D6A7D. A75D, I'm sorry. And that's going to give it that yellow color, but now it's not being applied to the time itself because that isn't wrapped within an anchor tag. Even though if you wanted to, maybe for some CSS you could do that as well. So we could also, for the time being, do article h6. And now that's being applied, and if we go back into Photoshop, you can see, okay, we have that, but it is different here. It looks like it's in italics, so let's go ahead and add that in. Font style is italic. Okay, and that'll be good for now. We'll use a custom font a little later on. All right, so now let's work on the secondary section, the sidebar. What you can see right here in the side. Okay, so we need to do a couple things here. What you see right here is the way it's going to look if JavaScript is disabled. But if it's not enabled, we need to at least provide some layout. So we're going to do a more general layout, and then later when we work on the JavaScript side, we'll go ahead and enhance this. So let's come down, and then at the bottom, we'll say secondary, and we'll give this a label of sidebar. Now, if we want to target it, we can come to the bottom, and you can see it's in a side with an ID of secondary. And let's begin by styling each of the sections. So if we come back, we can see that a side has various sections. Section class equals tabs. And then if we scroll down, we have another section. So for each section of the sidebar, we're going to style that. So we can say section. And what I want here is to clear both and make sure that if there's anything floated above it, it's going to clear it. And for now, I'm going to give it a background of red so you can see our bounding area. And I'm going to give each one a margin bottom of around 40 pixels. So you can see that this whole area is a section, and then we gave it 40 pixels and then 40 pixels as well. Okay, so now we have the images, and we know that the sponsors, that's eventually going to be images as well. We have who we are. So what we know is because this image is so wide, even if we floated it, it would still take up all the available space. So we can save ourselves some time and create modules. Modules is kind of a complicated word just to mean generic styling that can apply to everything. That way you don't have to repeat yourself over and over. Secondary, section, image, and that's going to float to the left. So if we refresh, let's go ahead and add in those images. So let's find it. Image source, let's go into our images folder, and we haven't sliced those out just yet. So I'm going to pause and do it myself since you know how to do this, and then I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back, and I've saved it as Graphic River. So I just did one. Since these are placeholders, so I'll do graphicriver.net, and we'll change this one to graphicriver.jpg, not .net. Okay, so now come back and you'll see that we have those two images. So they've all been floated to the left, but it simply didn't affect this one, so no need to write additional styling if we don't have to. So let's now work on that tabbing section, and we can't do too much right now, but if we go back to index.html and we can scroll to the top, and you can see that we have two things here. First, we have our tab headings, and that'll be what you click on, and then we have this section with a class of tabs, and that houses an unordered list containing each section. So let's come back, and in Espresso, within style.css, we'll go right here, and we'll give this a subheading of tabs, and I'll say tabs. The first thing is contain anything that's floated within it. But we have to be careful because we need to remember if we're styling and assuming that JavaScript is enabled, for example, if we float all the elements in order to set up our tabbing functionality, when JavaScript is disabled, it's going to look really strange, won't it? So for now, we're going to code this assuming JavaScript is enabled, and then later I'll show you how to apply specific classes to ensure that the styling is only run if JavaScript is enabled. Okay, so let's apply a background color. And this background color is going to be 257588. And while we're here, we'll also get rid of that red. All right, so now we have that bluish color. So what we need to do again is if we come into a project, we can see that we have a subtle gradient again from a dark blue to a light blue. So at this point, I'm going to start pasting things in. That way we can expedite the process a little bit. So we'll paste in gradients for WebKit. WebKit, same thing. We're just going top to bottom, and we're going from this darker blue color to the light color. And then we remember to compensate for Mozilla, and then we'll also compensate for the actual W3 version when that's implemented in browsers. And then next, if we come down, we apply a border radius, but we can't just do that in Mozilla. We have to do it within WebKit as well. And again, the official form for the new versions of WebKit and for IE9. And then finally, we add some padding bottom. So let's come back and try that out. And now can you see it goes from a dark blue to a light blue, as you can see right there. So if you want, sometimes I find it helpful to space out some of the areas. So get my border radius and make sure those are all together. Okay, let's paste in the next packet. And what we have here is the tab heading. So what we're styling here is the heading section, and this will contain each of our links. So first, let's just see what that gets us. And what that does is it sets rounded corners and it sets a background color. So you'll see here, we set a display to block. We set the margin bottom to 0 because we don't want there to be any spacing. They should be connected. And then background repeat, that can be removed. And then here we're applying a border radius, but only to certain sections. In this case, the top left and the top right, as you can see right up there. Now, if we go back in index.html, you'll see that to tab headings, we've applied a class of rounded. But the problem with this is, what if you decide later down the line, or your client says, you know what, I don't want those edges to be rounded? Well, you would need to either edit your style sheet or your HTML. And the idea is when you're affecting layout, you should never have to touch your markup. That's all done with CSS. So for now, let's get rid of class equals rounded. And now we just have those rounded corners on the top left and top right. Now take note that Mozilla and WebKit are slightly different in this area. And in fact, in Mozilla, you could do something like this. 10 pixels on the top, 10 pixels on the right, things like that. But you can't do that with WebKit to the best of my knowledge. Okay, and then we apply a border bottom. And that just gives it a little bit of an edge. You probably can't even see it, but now you can. And then we set the background color. Pretty simple. So continuing on, next we're going to grab the tab headings. And notice how we're referencing first here secondary and then tab headings, but that's really not that necessary because there can only be one ID. So I can grab it like that. This way we add less specificity as well. So let's see what happens now with this. If I refresh, if I hover over it, you get that blue background. So let's go over this. When you hover over a tab heading with a list item with a class of selected, selected will be the class that is currently selected, and we'll apply that with JavaScript. So for now, let's assume that this one is selected by default. So we'll apply that class. Next, if we come back, we set a background color to it. We set a position and context of relative, and we push it down just a little bit. And you'll see why we push it down shortly. But now, when it's selected or when you hover over it, it's going to get that background color to give the user some feedback. But now we still need these to float to the left because we don't want them taking up all that available space. So let's come back and we can say tabs. Let's place it right here. And we should probably indent. So this JavaScript class is something that we'll add a little bit later, and I'll show you how to allow for that. Okay, so first we go to those list items and we float them to the left. If I refresh, this is what we're eventually going to get with this bit of styling. So we float each one to the left. Now if we remove this width, they're only going to take up as much space as the anchor tag, but we want them to take up all available space. So I'm going to hard code this in at 83 pixels. And now you see that lines up perfectly, like so. Okay, and then next we align the text to the center because it should be in the center of the tab. And when you hover over it, the cursor should be a pointer because it's clickable. So make sure you always specify that. And then lastly, we just apply some padding. Otherwise, it's a little bunched up. Okay, next, we're going to get the tab headings and all the anchor tags, and we're going to make those white. Now again, that brown background has disappeared, hasn't it? And if we come back into Photoshop, you can see that that exists there the whole time. So once again, because we floated these list items, tabs container has collapsed. And you see how we have overflow visible? If we set that to overflow hidden, we'll trigger that little effect where contains its floats. Okay, and I also noticed that we need to group these tab headings, and they should actually be below here. Now, if I come back, can you still see all the text is right up against the edge? So let's give that some breathing room. And we'll come in and paste this in. And because this is associated with the tabs, let's make sure that we organize it as best as we can, and we can place it right here. So get the tabs and get the UL, and we apply some padding. There you go. and then we set the margin bottom to each one to 0, and you see what's happening there. It's pushing it up just a little bit, and then we apply a border top, and if I move this to red, you can see where that's being applied. So to each one we apply a border top. Now we need to style this comment section itself. So if we go into Photoshop, you can see it's styled really nicely like that. So if we go into Espresso, and we'll say comments, and we say get the comments UL and get the list item, and we begin by applying a border bottom and a border top. Then we get some padding all around and set the color to white. So watch what happens. This border technique is pretty neat. If I zoom in here, when you apply a border bottom and a border top, you can get this really nice effect where it looks like it's inset. So the key is to the bottom of the list item, make the border color a little bit darker than the background. And then to the top of the list items, make the border color a little bit lighter than the background. And now if we zoom out, you can see right there, it's not being applied right there. But right there you get that nice little inset look. But the problem with this method is then the very first one has a border top and the very last one has a border bottom. So we can get rid of that by using pseudo classes. So if we say comments li last child, this is a pseudo class that will target the very last item within the parent. So comments and then get the very last list item. And here we just reset the border bottom. And then here li first child, we do the same thing, and I'm also setting the padding top to 0 as well. And now we have our borders. Cool. Let's next style the H6 tags. So if we come in here, you can see within comments, we have the list item, we have the information, and then within an H6 tag, and this could also even go within a footer element. So if we did footer, that would make perfect sense because it's the footer of this area. Remember, a footer doesn't only apply to the footer of your website. It simply means if it's separate information. So for an article, you could have a header and a footer. Okay, so let's come back and refresh the page, and let's go ahead and add some of that styling now. So at the very bottom, comments H6, so we zero out the margin bottom, we give it a color, and that just comes from measuring in Photoshop. What color is this right here? And then we set the font weight to normal. We set the font size that we measured in Photoshop, and then I push it up just a little bit. So let's get rid of that one for now and see how this looks. There you go. Looks good, but the anchor tag, we need to work on that. But see the text here? It's a little too high. So if we set margin top to 0, that's not pushing it up. So let's check this out together in Firebug. And if we go here, you can see that this paragraph, by default, in the layout section, is going to have some margin bottom. So if I were to set that to 0, that's going to push it up, so we could play around with it. But the only thing is, what if the comments have more than one paragraph? Then you might need to do something like get the last child. So in this case, why don't we keep it a little simpler and set the margin top equal to a negative value. And we'll set it to -13. That way, it's a little bit easier and we don't have to worry about using lots of pseudo classes. All right, so that looks good. So there's one thing worth noting here is notice how the categories and the archives, it's just a list. So with that in mind, why don't we set up a little bit of a module, a class, that we can come back to. So let's apply a class and we'll say something like secondary, and the class name will be tab list. And this will be for styling anything within this a sidebar that has a class of tab list. So we'll come back and we'll apply it. And for comments, categories, we'll say class tab list. Now there's other ways to do this using structural pseudo classes, but we're not going to get into that just yet. So we'll do it this way to begin. Okay, so with this style of tab list, we can target all of those list items and then set the display to block, and we're going to do that border bottom, border top technique again, and then I'm going to apply some padding all around them, and that's going to give them what we see right here. Next, we're going to style some more, and we're going to take care of that getting rid of the border top and the border bottom. Now hopefully you picked up on something. Did you notice that we've repeated this a lot? So here we have the border bottom and the border top, but then right up here we have the exact same thing. So if possible, always try to combine this into one. So let's keep this as it is for now, come back and refresh the page, and watch what happens. If I refresh, you're still going to see those borders, but how come? We've reset them. And this is where specificity comes into play. There is weight that is applied whether you're using an ID element, a class, a tag name, etc. So in this case, we have a lot of weight here, and we're saying we want this border bottom to be this color. But then below here, even though it's lower in the cascade, you have lesser weight. And here you're saying border top, no, this should be this. But this guy has more weight, so he's bigger, and what he says is going to take precedence. And that way, you still see that border. So if you want to get rid of that, you have two options. One, apply more specificity, and then I'll get rid of it. Two, use important, but this isn't advised except in rare situations, but that'll work because that makes it important that that style takes effect. Or lessen the amount of specificity that you have up here. So we'll get rid of that. If I refresh, now this has the same specificity score, but because it's lower, it'll take precedence. There you go. Cool. So let's review the similarities. Let's go to tab list li, and let's compare this to what we had with comment li. Okay, well, they both have a display block, they both have a border top and border bottom, and they both have padding, and they're both going to have their color set to white. So with that in mind, maybe we can change comments and we can remove this entirely. Wouldn't that be cool? And now watch. We'll go back into index.html, and within comments, we'll also apply a class of tab list. Or we could do one other method. So let's try this out. And the only difference here is we need to go back to style and apply a color of white. Refresh, and now we're getting that same effect, but we didn't have to rewrite all of that code. So here's the last thing though, is if we come back, we know that we have this section class of tabs. And now to each of these ULs within it, we've applied a class. But is that really necessary? Do we need to target it? We would only need to apply a class if we can foresee in other areas of our website using this tab list. And if you don't, get rid of it entirely, because you can just target it directly by doing section tabs and then get the UL. Okay, let's go back, style.css, and now we'll say section, and I believe we called it tabs, and then UL. Now, if you want to be more specific, you can say direct. And what this means is only grab the unordered lists that are immediate children of the tabs. So for example, at the end, if I do this at the bottom and we said hello, so at the bottom, UL, LI, that will target this one. But now if we duplicate that and within here, we did another unordered list like that, this selector will not target any unordered lists that are not direct children of this parent. So if you did this, it would target any list items that are within it. But many times you only want to target the direct children, and that's what you use this for. All right, let's get rid of that, come back, and tabs UL. And so now I can simply copy this and paste it everywhere we need to. And we don't have to write duplicate code if we don't need to. So if I refresh, we're going to get the exact same thing, but less classes, less duplicate code. Now, when I hover over one of these, I want them to have a background color. So we'll paste it right around here. Tabs, LI, hover, and let's see what that does. Okay, well that works, but then we get the same thing right here. So you need to decide if you're okay with that. If you're not okay with it, there's a couple options. You could do tabs, LI first child, you could do that. Hover, and you could say background none. That would be one way to get rid of it. And let's make sure we get rid of that. So if we hover over it, that one's not going to highlight, but this next one is going to highlight. So how could we target that UL itself? You would do UL first child and then get the list item. And now if I hover over that, that's not going to show up, but these will. However, in this case, I don't mind having that background color, so we can keep it as it is. But it looks good here. If we hover over these, that looks nice. There's one thing though, is I want this to take up all available space if possible. So why don't we go into the categories section, UL categories, and you see how there's padding on the left and right? Watch what happens if we bring that down to 0 on each side. It's going to push them all the way out, and that way they take up all the available space, and it looks a little bit better in that particular case. So why don't we do that? In order to do that though, we need to target it either using pseudo classes or by applying an ID. So if we go back, we can again either target this by doing ID categories and archives, and we'll do that for the time being. So right here we'll say category, archives, padding left is 0, and the same thing for the padding right is 0. And that should be categories, right? There we go. And now we have that. Very cool. So we're getting there. Now I still see right above that anchor tag, that's still black and we don't want that. So let's go back to our H6 area and indent this, and we're going to make that color equal to white as well. And if we want, we could also say font weight is bold, something like that. But what I see here is that all the anchor tags are black. And if we know that we want all the anchor tags to be white in this area, why don't we instead do something like tabs A? Copy that, but we do know that we don't want them all to be font weight is bold, so we could just specifically grab that one, and then later we could come down and say tabs A, color is white. Refresh, and now those are being applied as well. Now when you're hovering over these, they don't need the text decoration, so we can get rid of that. Tabs A hover, text decoration is none. Alright, so let's go back to our Photoshop file, and we still need to style the who we are in the sponsor section. And notice how comments, category, and archives, we have these big headings right here. And the reason is because we're compensating for older browsers that don't have JavaScript enabled, or any browser that doesn't have JavaScript enabled. So if JS is not enabled, we're not going to see this. We'll only see these headings one after the other. But if it is enabled, eventually with JavaScript, we're going to remove that entirely. So the basic idea is that with JavaScript later, we'll come and say, grab the H4 tags and set the display to none. And that'll get rid of those entirely. And then later, we'll float and hide these with JavaScript. So we've actually done the bulk of what our tabs require right now. The rest of it's going to be JavaScript and showing and hiding different parts. Okay, so let's zoom out just a little bit and take a look at what we have so far. So we've done the header, we've done the navigation, all the fun transitions, we've done our banner section, that needs a little bit more work. We've done the breadcrumbs, now we've done the main section. And if we go into Photoshop, we can see that he kept it very simple here. We'll add some padding later. We need a continue reading area. We'll do that before we're done. But there's not much spacing here. And then he also has a blog button, and that'll be styled when we work on the forms section. Within the sidebar, we've created the beginnings of our area. And notice how when I click on these, they do link us to where we need to be. So those are already functioning to some extent. We'll just use JavaScript later to hide and show some of these areas. We have our who we are section. We go into Photoshop, we need to add a yellow background, okay? And in sponsors, we need to add the backgrounds and the spacing to that as well. So we know that all images are floated to the left. So in this case, why don't we just float this next image to the right? So sponsors, li, nth child, and 2n, or I could do even and float to the right. And what that's going to do is it's going to get every other one or every even one and float it to the right. Now the ones that this does not select, they still are set to float left because we already styled that earlier. So that is one possible way to do this, and we may come back later and I'll show you a different method. Okay, but we also need to add some yellow background. So if we go in here, grab that color really quickly, and let's try this out. So we'll go into sponsors, IMG, and we could do a border. So watch what happens though when we do this. Pixel solid, and go into Firefox, refresh, and that seems okay for now. But the problem is when you set this border much higher, or when the width exceeds, it'll break down. So in this case, we're okay with 5 pixels, but we're going to adjust the width later, and I'll show you a cool technique to work on that. And then we also need the who we are section. So we could probably be somewhat general and say secondary image, and all of those are going to have 5 pixels worth. Now let's also do a little bit more and add an outline. So I don't think he did it here, but if we want, we could go here and grab just kind of an outline color. And if we come back into Photoshop, we can say, let's do Moz box shadow. And we can use the spread technique. I'll explain this to you shortly. And let's see how that looks. Yeah, can you see that that added just a little bit, but that's probably too intense, isn't it? You want to keep it subtle. There, and then maybe go the other. Okay, let's try that one. Okay, yeah, and now we're just adding a slight outline. So that is a cool technique where you can use box shadow. So if I come out, you can barely see it, but you can see it at the same time. So the key here is you can set a border, and then if you want to apply additional borders, you could use a box shadow technique. So this is the X offset, Y offset, blur, and if those are 0, you have this optional fourth parameter, which is the spread. And if I set it to 5, it's going to go as much as you want and it won't affect the flow of the image at all. But keep it simple at 1. Now, the last thing we'll do in this lesson is we need to get the continue reading area. So if I come over, can you see continue reading? That has that styling as well. So we can be general here and go back to our main section. And we'll do it maybe right around here. And we'll say main A. And let's just see if we're targeting it like we hope to. Yeah, but that's targeting everything. So instead we could do main article A, but that's still going to style these within it. So we don't want that. In this case, we want everything within a paragraph tag. So let's switch that to main PA, and that'll take care of it for us. And now we're just styling that. Okay, so we obviously don't want red. Let's switch that to the color that we got from the Photoshop file, 247184. And I'm also going to set the font weight to bold. Refresh, and now we're styling that, and it looks good. Alright, so that's going to do it for this lesson. We still have a little bit more to do when we're fine-tuning in later lessons, like the buttons, and this is still a little too prominent. We need to make this H6 a little bit lower to de-emphasize it. But we're moving right along, so in the next lesson, we will work on the footer, and then after that we get to do a lot of fun stuff like compensating for older browsers, using special JavaScript files like Selectivizer to add support for some of these new selectors to older browsers. We got to style the form inputs, we got to finish up the tabs. We still got a lot to do, but I hope you're enjoying this, and take it at your own pace. Bye.